Hi guys! Thank you for joining. My name is Anna.
And my name is Anastasia. And welcome back to our channel Make That Change, where Anna and I share valuable information about how to arrive, excel, and thrive in Canada.
And today we're going to have some friendly debate. As you may already have noticed from the title of this video, we're going to discuss pros and cons of living in a big city in Canada. And we will discuss both financial and emotional advantages and disadvantages.
So I'll be talking about advantages of living in a big city. Since both Anna and I live downtown Toronto, we'll be talking about many things that makes us love living in Toronto so much.
And I will be in charge of defending smaller cities and telling you why it might be a better idea for you. Those are the things that usually irritate us about Toronto.
And before we start, we'd like to paint a definition of what we mean when we say bigger cities or smaller cities. So when we talk about bigger cities, we will typically talk about the top 5 largest cities in Canada with a population around 1 million or more. Those are Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, and Ottawa. And when we talk about smaller cities, it will be all other cities in Canada. And if you have anything to add about big cities, please do so in the comments below, and we'll see how many of you prefer bigger cities.
Or smaller cities. And if you like the content we create, please also don't forget to subscribe to our weekly newsletter and join our Facebook group, where you can connect to fellow newcomers and exchange valuable information. Alright, I hope you have enough advantages in your pocket, because I came prepared.
I did too.
Without any further ado, let's get started.
Alright, so let me start with an obvious one. In bigger cities, there's plenty of dining and entertainment opportunities. No matter what food you like or when you're hungry, 9 a.m. or 1 a.m., there's always an opportunity for you to eat and taste any cuisine that you'd like. There are specific pockets of neighborhoods or bigger cities that are dedicated to specific cultures and cuisines. Places like Chinatown, Little Italy, Greek Town, and so on and so forth. The choice of food in big cities is nearly endless because there are so many different communities here. And as for entertainment, all the artists, big or small, typically prefer coming to bigger cities for concerts and different events. The same thing goes for musicals, theater, festivals, and so on and so forth. If you're into movies, there's STIFF, International Film Festival in Toronto, there's film festivals in Vancouver, or if you're into comedy, there's Just for Laughs in Montreal. So there's everything for anyone really in big cities. And if you're into sports, NBA or NHL, the biggest sports games are held in the biggest cities. So to sum everything up, you'll never get bored on a Friday night in a big city. Well, actually, on any day for that matter. All in all, big cities are a no-brainer option if you're a foodie or into doing lots of events.
True. I can't deny that, but if you're willing to enjoy all the food and entertainment, you will be spending a lot of money. Of course, it's one's individual choice how much money you're willing to spend on food and entertainment, so it's not the disadvantage, it's rather a consideration. So the real disadvantage I'm going to bring up here is long waiting lines and crowds everywhere. You want to go grab something to eat at some place nice, there will be a waiting line and you will have to wait for hours. And it's not just bars or restaurants. If you want to go see a doctor, you will spend hours waiting in the line, and it goes beyond that. It's the same for banks or any other services. So bottom line here is there are lots of options of entertainment and food, but there are also too many people who want to enjoy it all.
That is actually a fair point. I personally hate waiting and standing in lines. It just drives me crazy. Switching gears a little bit, away from frustrations. Big cities have much bigger and better job opportunities. In bigger cities, there are more companies and more jobs and businesses that are open, and that presents a lot more things to choose from when you're looking for a job. Big cities have different types of companies, big and small, from small survival jobs all the way to worldwide headquarters of corporations. There are so many jobs for any industry, any company size, any role, and any company culture you're looking for. And the salaries in bigger cities are also a lot larger too. So the most ambitious and driven individuals typically flock to bigger cities.
Yes, I agree. But precisely because there are more job opportunities in bigger cities, the cost of living is insanely high. Especially in cities like Toronto or Vancouver, those are in the list of the most expensive cities in the whole world, and you will be spending a good chunk of your money on rent. So if it weren't for better salaries, you wouldn't be able to pay rent in a city like Toronto. Good thing is that many people are able to work remotely these days, which enables them to save on rent. So many big city boys and girls decided to move to smaller cities for that matter.
Yes, however, if you're moving to a smaller city, you most likely need to get a car. Living in the big cities allows you to save on car and gas and car maintenance costs because you can simply get around using public transportation or using bikes or just simply walking if you're not too lazy. The transportation system in bigger cities is typically very well developed and safe. So technically you can get from point A to point B easily without any major inconveniences. So what this does is it saves you money, it reduces the carbon footprint if you want to be environment friendly, and it eliminates the stress of the traffic jams.
That is a very good point, since car insurance in big cities is insanely high. For instance, in Toronto it's around $200 a month. And reality is that you will need a car if you like escaping the crowded and bustling city on the weekends. Which leads us to another disadvantage of big cities. It's very noisy. Ambulances rushing by, traffic, construction noise, crowds of people everywhere. This can drive one crazy, especially if you live closer to downtown.
Yes, you're speaking some truth, my friend. But on the other hand, big cities have a lot of different activities to offer. You can join different clubs, associations, amateur sports leagues, and so on. There's also meetups and different groups you can join. So if you're new to the city or you're looking for new friends, it's very easy to find some folks because there's just so many different options and groups to choose from. In smaller cities, on the other hand, you don't see as much choice about different group activities. And sometimes it's even hard to find some information about those activities in the first place because mostly those kinds of things travel by word of mouth in smaller cities. And on top of that, since there's less people in smaller cities, there's less diversity and you're much less likely to find your soulmate that shares a hobby with you. So in big cities, no matter whether you're into boxing, sports, painting, drawing, or maybe even knitting or puzzle assembling, you'll always find someone who loves the same thing as you do.
That is a very good point, since I remember my struggle when I was in a small city and I was trying to find something I like to do with other people, and I wasn't able to find anything. And whenever I would ask my colleagues at work what they usually do for fun, they would just smile at me indulgently. But how about crime rates in bigger cities? It's not a secret that smaller cities and smaller communities are usually safer, and it's very important, especially if you have small children with you and you want them to grow up in a kind and safe environment and spend more time outdoors enjoying the fresh air. So what can you come up with to outweigh this point?
Well, since we're talking about children, education is very important for children. And the biggest and the best universities are typically located in the bigger cities. There's a lot more programs to choose from, a lot more different universities and different levels of education to choose from. It's not uncommon for kids who live in smaller communities and towns to move out of their parents' homes chasing a better and a more prestigious university in a bigger city. And to outweigh your previous point with one more thing is bigger cities have much bigger diversity and they have much more people from different walks of life to offer. And that's very important for children, especially for teenagers. They need to live through different types of experiences to broaden their scope. And meeting diverse people will teach them so much about different cultures, customs, and traditions.
And get them exposed to different points of view as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said. I agree with that. And I guess it's time for me to come up with another disadvantage of big cities, which is pretty obvious. It's traffic. I mean, come on, we all know how much you hate driving in traffic jams.
Yeah, I don't have patience for that.
There are traffic jams all the time during rush hour and road closures, and for no visible reason at all, which is super stressful and irritating, and it brings air and noise pollution. While in a small city, you can drive everywhere within minutes.
But if you're in the big city, especially if you live in a central location, you don't even need to drive and encounter traffic. Because in a big city, everything is close by. I personally love taking small walks to a coffee shop nearby where I can just sit, chill, and read a book. Or if I need to do a pharmacy run, I can do that at any point in time, and it's just 5 minutes away. And it's even open until midnight, if not later. That would be practically luxury if you live in the small cities, because places like pharmacies, restaurants, bookstores, and all of that are typically tucked away in some plaza somewhere on the edge of the city, so you have no choice but to drive there. And if you've ever driven in a small city, you probably have noticed that no one ever walks in a small city. Everyone drives and it looks like a ghost town.
Yeah, that's right, because distances are larger, because people live in huge houses with big backyards instead of small cramped townhouses with little patio that looks at your driveway. And this leads us to another point. In big cities you have less living space because the land is so much more expensive and you have to pay so much money for a small apartment instead of a nice house with a backyard. And once again, it's a very important point, especially if you have a big family with kids and pets. So to sum up, if you venture out to a smaller city, you can pretty much pay a mortgage or rent a nice big house instead of living in a small cramped apartment in downtown Toronto or Vancouver.
That is so true, and the situation has gotten so much worse since COVID. When Anna and I were looking for a new apartment, we were crying every single time where we would see the price that they would charge us for rent potentially and the size of the apartment. Just unbelievable. There's another point that I'd like to highlight. The proximity to the airport is actually a nice to have. I personally love traveling, and it's really nice for you to be able to be home from a long flight in just 30 to 60 minutes from your flight arrival. You can take a train or maybe take an Uber or a taxi and be home in no time, as opposed to smaller cities where you'll probably have to drive for an hour if not more. And if you're thinking about moving to Toronto, the cool thing about that is that there's actually 2 airports, and one airport, a smaller one, is located right downtown. When I lived in Montreal and traveled to Toronto every now and then, I appreciated it so much that you would arrive and then in just 10 or 15 minutes you'd be downtown doing some work or hanging out. No need for traffic, no traffic jams.
Once again, great point, and I feel like we already have a huge list of pros and cons here. But to answer to your point, I'll mention lack of green spaces in bigger cities. When you live in a small city, you probably don't have this urge to escape every weekend or travel far because you have big open green spaces and forests, lakes, rivers nearby. You usually wake up to birds chirping, not cars honking. And as much as I enjoy this proximity to the airport, I think we travel by plane far less often than we prefer to drive when we go camping or hiking. So that's one thing to consider. Not how often you travel, but where and how.
These are such wise words, Anna. And I agree. I guess ultimately it just goes down to different people's perspectives and preferences. And if you're moving to Canada and thinking which city is best for you, we recommend you weigh your own pros and cons based on some of the things that we've discussed in this video. And if you're building a list about all pros and cons to choose which city to move to in Canada, Anna and I made a video about how to choose the right city in Canada a couple of months ago, so check the link in the description box below.
As you can see, both living in a big and a small cities have their own pros and cons. So if you prefer living in a big city but end up in a small town in Canada, try to pay attention to its advantages. You might even change your preferences. And vice versa. If you're from a smaller city and you end up settling down in a big city in Canada, try to look on the bright side and enjoy all it has to offer.
And that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, a reminder for you guys that if you're a newcomer, please join our Facebook group to meet other like-minded immigrants. And also, please subscribe to our newsletter where we share the most recent news and information about life and career in Canada. And if you don't want to do any of that, leave a comment below and let us know which city do you prefer, big or small?
Let's vote! In addition to that, Gently tap that like button below and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and we will definitely see you in the next one. Bye friends!
Cheers!